Even.
Again, I go back to bringing up your kid. If you bring up your kid to be confident, he will be confident all his life. But if you suppress your kid, he will be very wicked and learn not to be very weak man to women. So that's what they're doing. That's what they're going to us. Sometimes I notice it even in caméra invisible. Caméra invisible camera. You can say like someone is making the joke. We send up here on this rope. I'm holding from the other end. So that's something. I'll be back and I leave you. And you find people standing there for hours. It just shows you the personality. If you have some personality, so why should I be standing there?
What time is Awesome.
That's why
it's already time. Huh? It's time already.
It's time now.
Yeah.
Discuss, go and check, and you know.
And what's your name? Naima. Mike.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot.
What about in Christianity? Do you not believe that the Bible, does the Bible allow the Christians to be as governing authorities?
I'm not sure. I'm not religious. Yeah, I know.
No.
I don't want to misrepresent anyone.
Yeah, no, because the reason I'm asking is because I think the lady explained quite well about from the Islamic perspective, but I would like to know from the Christian perspective.
Yeah. As far as I know, I think that there's a passage which is like, let unto Caesar be Caesar's, let unto God be God's, or something like this.
Yeah.
I don't know the words, but I believe it's for Christians, they should defer to their elected officials to pass laws to govern them.
So regardless of who the government official is, as a Christian you have to obey them.
I'm not sure. That's the interpretation that I've heard from Christians. But again, I can't say with any degree of authority.
While you were looking, I just fished for this verse, which is much more clear than the Caesar one.
Yes.
This is in Romans chapter 13, verse 1. It says, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. So you see, if the authority was, let's say for example, Sharia, or the authority was perhaps Nazism, or whoever it is, whether it was a Christian or a Hindu or whatever the authority is. As a Christian, based on the Bible, based on that passage, you have to submit to it. What do you make of that? Let's take religion away for a minute, and let's say if someone was going to base their understanding of a governing authority based on that scripture only.
I can't speak for Christians. For myself, I would say that there should be some higher degree of what's right or what's wrong. Like if it's okay to kill somebody for their skin color, and the governing authority says, yeah, that's fine, it wouldn't sit right with me. So I would say that's not fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if a Christian who's a believing Christian goes by the text, you know? They're Puritans and they would go by what the text says. In fact, this text, if I read further on, it goes on to say that anyone who rebels against that authority is actually rebelling against God.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably why I don't believe in this.
Yeah.
There's kind of I don't know if this is what you were alluding to, but I feel like there's something that supersedes this.
A theocracy.
Exactly. What the governments or what the people we put in authority. Like we grant authority to people, but that doesn't mean that the universe or some natural law is granting authority to them. We kind of give them that authority. I do think that there is somehow some like higher thing, which is just like our rational, how we can rationalize it, how we can like reason with whether something is just or good.
Okay.
That is independent from.
But isn't that subjective?
Well,
yes.
It is, isn't it? Because what might be good for you and independent for you might be bondage for someone else and bad for someone else.
Yes.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, and in that case, there has to be some, again, social contract where at least how I view it is something that could be good for me, that could be very, very bad for somebody else.
Yeah.
I shouldn't do it because essentially I wouldn't want somebody else to be doing it to me. So it's this general social agreement that you have living in a society. That's
Yeah,
how I
but
see it.
unfortunately that's not the case, isn't it?
No, it isn't. But it's one of those
Yeah.
things where legal authority can say it's illegal to jaywalk, to cross the streets.
Yeah.
You know? And if there's no cars, I'll do it.
Right.
And if a police officer sees me and wants to fine me, I would think that's unjust because again, I broke.
You're
the
not
law.
harming anyone,
I
yeah?
broke the law, but I wasn't harming anyone, and I
Okay.
wasn't harming myself, and I made the rational decision that that was okay at that time.
Okay. So as far as you're not harming anyone, you would consider that to be legal or should at least be allowed.
I see very
Is that
no
the
reason to
principle?
disallow that.
Would that be the principle that you work on, or
For the most part.
I think that's like just, at least for me, that's kind of a very neutral. It's not good, morally good or bad. It's just if it's not harming anyone.
well, it can it can be morally bad depending on, like I said again, the person you're speaking to. For example, there are many people who want to practice, for example, incest. There are people in Europe, I don't know come from Canada, but there are people in Europe who want to practice incest. They are saying, look, we are both adults and we both consent and we are not harming anyone. So why are you saying that's against the law? Now that might be immoral to you and me, but for them it's not immoral. And they are working on the same principle you're working on, which is A, they're not harming anyone, it is consensual, and it is something that is that basically agrees with that conscience.
There is the risk of harming the child.
Yeah.
What if they use contraception? You see what I mean? They got ways around that because they've thought about this, but they want to legalize it. Now they're going to the parliament and they want to legalize it as something that's a legal paradigm within the law itself. You see, this is what I'm saying. There's a difference between bringing in just a secular understanding of the world where everything goes as long as you're not harming someone, because that thing can sometimes backfire, and it has done in the past.
I'm curious, in this case where they're using contraception, so there's no risk of a child being born.
Then you're okay with that?
Am I okay with it? Well,
I'm not okay with it.
Morally, are you okay with that?
I mean, my main question is, so what is the harm in this case? I'm curious.
No. Their argument is there is no harm, and it is consensual, and it is something that they both, as adults, have the right to do. But your principle is the same, isn't it? That as long as you're not harming anyone, then what's the problem with it? So would you agree in their favor, or would you disagree? Because it's the same principle they're arguing as you.
I didn't know this was a debate here. Just thinking about it now, I haven't had much time. I would say if they're not harming anyone, then let them do it.
Okay. What do you say?
Yeah, I see little reason why it would be ethically wrong.
Why do you think majority of the countries have got it as illegal,
Well,
unless it was ethically wrong or morally wrong?
I mean, there's societal. Well, I agree with myself. There's some things which we see as taboo, and those taboos have not always been here. They can shift over time. So I would say, I mean, just me growing up in the 80s, in the 90s, the attitude towards, I'll just say, same-sex marriage or homosexuality.
Homosexuality,
was
yeah.
completely different than.
Yeah,
it was
absolutely,
very taboo to even talk about in my hometown. Very conservative. And so you could say, okay, because I feel somehow icky, because I feel uncomfortable with this topic, does that mean that it's wrong? Or does this mean that I've just been conditioned to think that it's wrong? And so this is, to me, the question is, okay, who is it harming and what is the good and the bad in this, on both sides?
So you have no problem whatsoever if someone that you know very, very close and near and dear to you would be sleeping with his mom. You wouldn't have a problem with that.
I would think it would be very socially strange.
Socially strange,
Yeah, very socially strange.
But no issues other than that.
It's similar to if you think about Nazi Germany, where it was legal to persecute Jews.
No, that's different because that is obviously harming someone. So let's not compare apples and pears because that is literally oppression, isn't it? But here, like I said, they're both adults, they both are consenting to it, and they both consider it to be their right to express themselves freely, just like the same-sex marriage you're saying. Again, the same thing, because before it was a taboo and it was considered more immoral and unethical and basically antisocial, so on. But then gradually people got used to it. So you see, when people will get used to their sons sleeping with their mothers or the father sleeping with their daughters, maybe it becomes socially acceptable and morally justified somehow.
Well, and I think that there's maybe 2 degrees here. There's one which is like our social laws, so we can like, people can somehow embarrass themselves so much that we shun them socially, but then we don't put them in prison. So there's kind of a difference there. Like I recognize that you are having sex with your mother. I don't want any part of that, so I'm just not going to hang out with you. So that's one thing. There's another argument, which is, okay, we think that this is harming society as a whole, and so we need to penalize these people by throwing them into, by punishing them by some like actual concrete means, putting them in jail, fining them, something like this. And so that's, I think, the distinction here.
So which one would you lean towards?
Like, I have a hard time saying, okay, we should throw them in jail, because if they're not harming someone,
Okay.
I guess if I don't really want to be around them because I find it uncomfortable, then that's my choice. I would just walk away and say, okay, I don't really want to converse with.
So you see, we have come full circle with us discussing the fact that it's subjective, isn't it? Everything that you see around today is subjective in terms of morality and so on. You see, but don't you think there has to be a higher authority to basically someone who draws the line as to what we should do and should not do, what is morally justified and what is immoral, rather than the society and the times dictate to us?
Higher, depends on what you mean by higher. I do think that we...
Well, I mean God, basically. That's what I'm trying to get to. Because you see, if someone, I don't know if you believe in God. Do you believe in God? Agnostic?
Towards it,
okay,
yeah.
but
No, not really.
you don't believe in God? No. Agnostic or atheist?
No, I'm more on the atheist side.
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, I mean, so maybe this argument actually fits in quite well with your worldview, because it is God, basically no dictating, no theocracy, no theological strings being pulled there. This is purely based on what people think about what is morally right, what is something that is accepted in the society, something that people kind of either reject or accept based on their feelings. You see, but the point remains, where does society draw the line, and who has that authority? Because if you're just going to allow the majority to dictate that, and the majority can be wrong, so at the end of the day, based on your worldview, who would you put in charge, or who would you give this authority to draw the line? Because I don't know if the government is always right, and we have seen from the past history that they cannot be always right. Yes?
But I think like our feelings and our intuitions kind of inform our opinions. And
which can be wrong as well.
They can be wrong. But I think still we can have man-made constructs. Like our ethics, maybe I'll give a concrete example. So like our hospitals.
Yeah.
We want them to be admitting, we want them to admit everyone fairly. So if my friend here, he gets injured, and I say, okay, I take him to the hospital and I say, okay, he's seriously injured, I want him to have priority over everyone else. So we say, okay, it's clearly wrong. Like the system needs to be built such that we cater to everyone equally. Just because like he's the most important person to me, that doesn't mean that he should get treatment first. So we need to have the system in place, and like
Let me put a spanner in that
institution. I'll just say our institution says, okay, we need to treat them fairly, and we can't have favoritism. So even in this like small instance, even though it's like harming me, and if I had my opinion, and if I had my choice, I would put him in front of everyone else. I'm okay understanding that, okay, there's a good reason why he's back of the line. And that's how we kind of like create our societies, is based off of these like...
But it's not always that. It's not like the first come, first served, is it? Like for example, if there was a child who was profusely bleeding in front of him, and he's not really in that much of a danger, then obviously he'll give the child the priority.
Yes.
Regardless of whether he came at the last or at the beginning. You see what I mean? The argument is that you give priority based on the circumstance. And then the same goes with whatever happens in our world today. Yes, you do not just say just because somebody out there feels right about a certain situation, you allow them, yes, let's make it legal because this community here thinks it's legal. You do not, maybe you haven't actually looked at the greater harm it does. Yes?
How do we judge this greater harm?
You look at the actual incident, and then you assess based on that. And that would go for everything. Take alcohol, for example. Today alcohol is legal in all the countries. And we have every evidence conceivable to us in the 21st century of the impact and the effect and the dangers of alcoholism. Yeah. Either whether you're directly impacted by it or you're indirectly impacted by it. There is, but you see, most of the governments today have legalized it, and they get revenue from it. Not only the fact that they have legalized, which I call the poison, a known poison and a known harm, and the same goes with cigarettes. Yes, again. And there are huge lobbies which dictate the laws behind this, which have got control within the government. So this is what I'm saying, you see. Today, we have got many things which we know the dangers of. So even after the dangers have been assessed, nothing's been done about it. In fact, it's been promoted even more. You see what I mean? So that's why, coming back to the question again, don't you think there has to be a higher authority to make us realize and make us acknowledge that this is something that is necessary for human beings and for our survival as a whole, as a community, because we do not see the advantage or disadvantage of an individual or a particular community, but we should look at the community as a whole. You see, this is something, by the way, I'm a Muslim, and as a Muslim, we believe that the laws which have been given to us in terms of what has been forbidden and what has been allowed and permitted, we call that the haram and the halal, the forbidden being the haram and the permissible being the halal. This is something quite necessary in our community, whether today, whether yesterday, or whether tomorrow. It's always because if we know someone of a higher authority who knows us better than anyone else because he's created us, then he would give us such laws which are good, beneficial for us, plus warn us at the same time which are harmful to us. So you see, in Islam, it nips it in the bud about the alcohol. Alcohol is not permissible. And the same goes with the cigarettes. Yes, anything that harms your body, you stay away from it. And the same goes with any narcotics, any drugs, or anything that harms your body. The same goes with eating fatty food as well, which is bad for you, you know. So I'm not saying just alcohol, or I'm not just saying drugs. I'm saying anything that harms your body is something that you should stay away from. And this is what we instill within our communities, within our belief, and within our families as well.
Is it something that, so I agree it's things that you should stay away from.
Yeah.
Is it something that should be discouraged or something that should be illegal and you're punished if you do it?
Well, it depends on the danger. For example, if things like alcohol and drugs, which is a clear danger, then I think that should be not permissible. At least that's my opinion. Because you see, it's not really taking away the rights of the people. Because you see, if somebody demands, for example, if your child demands to drink poison, yes, you will take it away from them, would you not? You wouldn't give him a choice. Do you want it or do you not want it? Because you know clearly that is something harmful for you. You know that is a clear danger for you. So what would you do? You would say that is not permitted for you.
But I think this
period, and that's it.
Quickly in this context, in the child-parent relationship, we kind of assume that children don't have they aren't responsible enough to make their own decisions.
Are you saying if you had an 18-year-old child, you would give him a poison? Seriously?
No, I would say at some point, we kind of hand the keys to the car over to the people, to our children. We say, okay, now you're old enough to make your own decisions.
No, that's different. You see, that's apples and oranges. If you know something is clearly dangerous, for example, drugs, and if your child who's now 18 years old wants to do drugs, what would you say to him or her? Would you say, it's your choice, you're grown up, you're adult enough, or would you try to discourage them and basically forbid them even? As a good parent, I think any good parent would actually forbid them.
I would highly discourage it, but I wouldn't forbid it. I don't know if it's 18 or 21 or 19, whenever I or somebody feels like somebody becomes an adult, I think that they should have their own decisions over their own life as long as they aren't harming other people.
What if they're harming themselves?
Then that's their choice. So
really? So you as a good parent would give them the choice to harm themselves?
If that's something that they want to do, I would again highly discourage it. I would try to reason with them, but I wouldn't lock them up.
Oh no, I didn't mean locking them up.
No, of course.
What I meant is you stick to your guns and you say it's forbidden for you. And then if they do it, then the onus is on them, isn't it? Because now they are adult, 18 or over. The onus is on them. But you as a parent, you will stick to your gun. You say no, it's not permitted, it's not allowed. Okay? So you see, this is something which is known danger, remember. It's not like a car. A car is not really dangerous unless you misuse it. I mean, if you're going to use that, then you wouldn't even go in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Because you can misuse many things in the kitchen.
You could say the same for alcohol. I had a beer for lunch. I wouldn't consider that misusing it. I'd consider it driving safely.
No,
with the car.
hold on. But you